I want to present an idea to you, and so I want to read a scripture that's going to set the tone for us to get started. Our word for the week is peace. And so I want to read John 14:27 when Jesus says to his disciples, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Last week we talked about the difference between joy and happiness, and I submitted to you that happiness is a response to our external circumstances versus joy, which I believe is an internal orientation, a disposition that accesses the resources that are down in our body, that joy bubbles up, not in a response to our external circumstances, but sometimes in spite of it. I want to do something similar with the idea of peace this week. When Jesus says, "My peace I leave with you," not as the world does, he is contrasting it to something that would have been very familiar to his first century audience. And so you might find it interesting that there was a saying in that ancient world that Rome creates a desert and calls it peace. And so I want to submit to you today that peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of something else. I'll say it again. Peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of something else. We are an Easter people, and so we believe that the Spirit of Christ is alive in the world and at work not only in us, but between us. That presence of God's Spirit brings certain things into our lives, and they are often called the fruit of the Spirit. I'm going to put them up on the screen so that you can see them. We get them from Galatians chapter 5, and it says this: "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And against such things there is no law." In that famous passage, the Apostle Paul says to us, where the Spirit is at work, you can expect these things to be present. It is rooted in presence, but the fruit, so the root and the fruit, the root is the work of God's Spirit in our lives and in between us. The fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such thing there is no law. So, when we say to one another, "Peace be with you," the passing of the peace, we are not just saying, "May conflict be absent from you." As much as that's a great thing, and I don't want to downplay that, it would be so great to remove from somebody the conflict, both internal and external, that plagues our world and our psyches in these days. I wish I could take from you that conflict, that animosity, that anxiety. But the absence of those things is not peace. That's just neutrality. Now, for some of you, if I could, I would love to get you to neutral, especially in these trying times. I would, and I pray for you pastorally, that you would at least get up to neutral. But I just want to say, that's not the same as the presence of peace. Peace is not the absence of something, it is the presence of something. And so as we look forward to next week, we're going to celebrate Pentecost, the coming of God's Spirit to all flesh, in which women and men prophesy, they see visions, people are healed and restored and put back into right relationship. I'm a Pentecostal, by the way, not because I speak in tongues, but because I believe in the democratized, decentered presence of God in the whole world. I'm a Pentecostal preacher. And it is that presence, the Spirit of Christ, that brings peace. Peace is not the absence of something, it is the presence of something. And I'm submitting to you today that it is the presence of God's Spirit at work in you and between us. And when that Spirit is at work, what you can expect are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. And against such things you cannot legislate. I just want to say, for time reasons, I cut out a part of my sermon, which was the history of the word peace and its rootedness in the Jewish tradition of the word shalom, which involves the whole community. It's not just a personal peace, it's a whole community, and it involves many areas of life, including politics, religion, justice in the courts, economics, health, so many things. It is a whole people in a whole life of health. That's the idea of shalom that Jesus was working off of when he talked about peace. So I'm inviting you all to the table now. I would love to hear either what you think of this idea, or if you have any illustrations or comments or concerns or anything at all. I have talked. Now it's my time to listen.